Healthcare. You up at Verizon, right?
No, Spectrum now.
Okay. Oh, that's you making big bucks. Yeah.
Trying to.
No, that's a man. I follow companies. Oh,
But just be good. You want to know how you're doing.
yeah. I follow companies and try to get some of y'all stock for us too. I can't afford it.
All right, so what's up, y'all? This is your boy Hook coming to you again with another episode of my Get Hook Live podcast. We have a very intriguing, very special show this afternoon. I think it's going to be really great. So for those of you who are watching on via Facebook, make sure you like, share, and comment. We want this to reach as many people as possible, and we also want to make sure that you comment because your comments are truly going to drive the conversation. All right. Now, before we get into the subject matter, I have a really quick PSA. So essentially, what's going on is that this coming Saturday, June 15th, there's going to be the third annual Juneteenth Freedom Festival. It's going to be from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. At Earl Park in Columbia. The address is 1113 Parkside Drive. Now, for all you black people out there, you should be familiar with Juneteenth. If you're not, essentially what it is, it's Independence Day for Black America. Essentially, it commemorates the emancipation of the last enslaved people in the United States. It's going to be a day of remembrance, rejoicing, and reflection. It's a free event, so it's going to be a free community event. It's going to feature live entertainment, vendors, health screenings, an award ceremony, guest speakers, and it's going to be family fun for all ages. So if you're not doing anything, parents, make sure you take your kids out because I think it's going to be a very good event, a very fun event actually. So we'll go ahead and get into the subject at hand. This has been a highly anticipated one. Um, Before we begin, I feel the need to preface this, right? Um, First off, I believe in God. All right. I believe that Jesus died on the cross for our sins. I believe he was resurrected. And I believe in heaven. Not too sure about hell yet, but I believe in heaven. There is a heaven. But I want to preface that because for whatever reason, people think that when you have questions, that you're questioning your belief, you're questioning God. Uh, I grew up in a black church family. You know how black churches go. Sunday school, the whole nine, right? And we were always taught, pray, don't question God, don't question the Bible. Everything happens for a reason. God don't make no mistakes, right? When I was younger, I didn't question these things because I probably got knocked upside the head or something. But as I got older, I was telling Cole and Chris earlier. As I got older, I began studying for myself, and I came up. I had a lot of questions, man. I mean, and again, I didn't question my faith, but at the same time, I'm like, all right, so there are contradictions. They run rampant in the Bible, right? So basically, today's topic is about black folks and religion. Um, who are we to question about the Bible, right? So I want to allow my guests to go ahead and introduce themselves and talk about what made them want to come be a part of the show.
Well, I'm Crescenda. You all may remember me from a few lives that Daryl and I have done. But I run an organization called Suppers for the Soul here in Columbia, which is a faith-based organization that really promotes the wholeness of women, knowing that God has a purpose and a plan for your life, regardless of what your past, what your circumstances are. And we just kind of apply biblical principles to our everyday lives so that we are successful. I grew up as a PK. Both of my parents were elders in the church. A lot of like what Daryl stated, growing up in the early days, we grew up in the Holiness Church, and we did not question God. It was what we were told was what it was, and there that was it. So I'm glad to be here to kind of give my point of view as it pertains to Black people and religion, and how I think I've developed in my own personal relationship with God, which does allow me to question and get some answers to the things that I question.
Hey everybody, I'm Coach Sean. Thank you all for having me here. And we all, I guess we all have similarities when it comes to our initial upbringing. Of course, in the black community and black family, we start our kids off in church and the whole train up a child type thing. Fortunately for me, I was able to like live in different areas. My parents divorced at an early age, so whenever I was with my father, we attended an AME church. That's kind of what I did there. My mom was a member of the United Methodist Church, which was completely different, but the same thing. It wasn't even about questioning because at that time, the kids never really read the Bible themselves.
Right.
It's like the sermons were led by reading, which dealt with one or two scriptures that coincide or a way of relaying a message through scripture, and that's just what we got, what we gathered. And I'll say early, like around fifth or sixth grade, we moved to Boston, and there my mom attended a United Methodist church, but it was a denomination that was about 90% white. Everything was completely different. I attended Bible study, and this is when I really first started to read the Bible. And we learned like all the books of the Bible, the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 2, Galatians, Ephesians. I knew all that stuff, like every single thing. I knew and everything in the Bible. Like I read the book like a subject book. And again, like I had so many questions. But the thing about that was the questions were invited. My mom, she was faith-based. She had a lot of faith, and she felt like, don't question, don't open that can of worms. This is how it is. If you pray, if you do right, good things will happen. Right. Thankfully, my father, who's also an educator, math teacher, his parenting style was like through Socratic dialogue. Right. It was engaging. He always questioned things like, why would you do this? What was the thought process? So he taught us how to think. Right. So he invited that type of dialogue. So when I asked questions, if he knew an answer, he'd tell me. If he didn't, he said, so I don't know. Right. It's just based on this is what we believe. Right. And it was cool. So I was like, you know what? I accepted the idea that as far as church went, was like it's better to believe than not to believe. Because if you don't believe and you're wrong, then you're going to hell.
Right. It's like a punishment.
It's like punishment, and but if you believe these things happen. But I want to tell you what really changed my perspective. When I got to college, I majored in philosophy. I started as a math major, changed my major to philosophy. And in philosophy, I won't say it conflicts with religion, but in philosophy, you're taught to question everything. Because like, how do you know anything really, really exists? Like you have to do a deep dive into everything. So some of the things that we talked about in philosophy was like cause and effect, right? And causal agents, and determining the difference. Like you can have similar outcomes, right? So let's say you two are arguing. You push Chris. She accidentally hits her head. She dies. Are you responsible for her death?
Yeah.
Why?
I pushed her.
Because you pushed her. What if something was falling on her and you pushed her out of the way and she accidentally hit her head?
I don't know, because I was trying to save her.
So again, what changes it? Same actions, right? Same outcome.
Right.
But what's the only thing that changed?
The intent.
The intent, your initial action.
Yeah.
So we started thinking about that. Well, if the initial action, then things can't be as concrete as it's written in the Bible. Thou shalt not this, shalt not that. Yeah. This leads to hell, this, that, because you have to consider initial actions, causal agents, things like that. So again, not just questioning religion itself, but it's like, okay, we accept there's a higher power. Even in philosophy, we accept that there is a higher power, just the way that things are structured and how they were described to us. Like, and then we get into like, so your verse with the Bible, and like David being anointed king. And everybody talks about David and Jonathan and expression of true friendship and all that. Right. But then you're familiar with the story of David and Uriah. Mm-hmm. And what he did to Uriah. And when he found out he got this man's wife pregnant, he sends Uriah off to be one of his lead soldiers to die, to get killed. Right. But then through that, God still anointed him. Right. So then, are we ever truly condemned to hell?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because and earlier I was reading about Lot, right? And God saw Lot as this righteous figure, right? But the people of Sodom, the men of Sodom, wanted to apparently have homosexual relations with the angels, right? But to save the angels, to spare them, he gave up his two virgin daughters, basically to be gang raped,
Right.
You know, but God saw him as a righteous figure. So how can, to me, I'm like, how can God be okay with that? You know what I mean? And yeah, like rape ain't okay.
Right,
But again,
right.
it's like maybe it was a sign of the times. I don't know.
So it goes to our conversation earlier about you have to a lot of what I feel, especially in the Black community as it pertains to religion and the Bible, is dates back to slavery. So we're told that this is how we're supposed to believe. This is the way that it is. And going back to the King James version,
Right.
this was King James's version to basically keep the slaves in line.
Right.
Right.
So the Bible talks about my people perish for the lack of knowledge, and I take that to mean that it's my responsibility to research, know the history of what was going on in the world at that time to make sure that it's applicable. It's funny that you talk about being in a white church versus a black church earlier. I'm now here in Columbia. I'm in a non-denominational church. But it's different because the lead pastor is white.
Okay.
There's not a lot of emotion.
You can dress like this.
I can dress like this. You can dress like that.
Right.
You know, but there's not a lot of what we've come as Black people to be emotional creatures, right? So to get in this environment is so different. I'm really learning. So we were talking about Abraham. And you know the story of Abraham. He waits all these years to become a father. And God blesses him with a son, and he tells him to offer him up as a sacrifice.
Right.
Well, it took my now pastor to explain the culture at that time was they would offer their children up as sacrifice.
Right.
If that was the what the Holy Spirit, well, it wasn't the Holy Spirit at that time, but if they were led to offer their children up, it was a custom.
Right. And see, the problem is now that I'm glad we can have this talk now, but like as a kid and hearing that, growing up, we didn't know that was how it was at the time. So if we don't ask questions, how are we gonna know? But we were told, don't ask, just don't question.
I was sitting in church 2 weeks ago, like, wait, we have the churches I've been in have preached that message as Abraham had faith, so he offered his son up in faith that God was gonna make provision.
Right.
No, he was okay with it because that was the custom of that time.
Yes.
So what people have to realize is that they can't rely solely on man's interpretation. Someone in the pulpit. You have to know the history, the background, and what I personally believe is personal relationship.
Absolutely.
Something that to piggyback off what you stated, like the history and what's going on during that time. That is something that we tend to include or accept when it's beneficial to us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was like those times. Because if we're going to follow things, then how do we pick and choose what we want to follow?
Right.
And it becomes what's beneficial to us. So then, is it really like, do we have these set criteria within religion? Or are they basically like norm records? Do they change based on the messenger, based on the time, based on what I'm going through, how it benefits me? And when you talk about during that time, so I started researching, of course, the King James Bible and like what was going on during that time, and when was this book authored, and like what else was going on. I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense, and this is why they are going to include different things.
Right.
But some people just feel like, I think what loses me as a student, I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm willing to learn from anyone.
Right.
What loses me is I intentionally ask questions just to see a person's response, and so many people are afraid to say, I don't know.
Right.
So when you can't say that, you've lost me.
It's a problem.
Because we're in the organization, we're terms, right? Just like, we've beaten different brothers, and if I don't know something,
You remember when I asked him,
yeah,
you've been in longer than me, so.
and I don't have a problem with any. I don't know. Uplift me.
But people are afraid to do that, like somehow saying, I don't know,
Discredits them.
What discredits them is give me a BS answer, and then I found out that
You're wrong,
totally
and that's what people like to do when it comes to religion.
and I'm never going to ask you again.
Right. So I've experienced that a lot, and you can do it at all times with social media. You ask somebody some questions very few will say, I don't know.
Right.
They will go on what they were taught, or some will just say, oh, this is how it
They're
is.
gonna go to Google and
And then, and then as soon as it contradicts or conflicts with something someone else said,
Right.
then I become the bad guy. I'm stirring the
Right.
pot. I'm trying to start. Yes. But I'm like, this is what happens, and this is why we lose a lot of people, and we don't have blind followers.
Right.
You know, but whatever faith a person has, you know, I commend it, and I too have faith, you know, and I pray, you know, and I believe in prayer, you know, just that the way the whole structure of religion stuff works, that is where they lose me, and this
Absolutely.
idea
Right.
of because I thoroughly believe that we cannot have both ways. Like, if everything is just already destined, right, predetermined, then do we really have free will?
And if I start here, it doesn't matter what I do in between.
Ultimately.
I'm still gonna end up where I'm
What's
supposed
supposed
to
to
be.
be?
So really, my actions are not really my actions.
And if I have free will, does God just know what's going to happen, but does not intervene or control it?
Right.
I think it comes down, my opinion is that it comes down to choice. So do you want it your way? You're gonna follow it your way, do it the way that you've outlined it, the way that you've been taught. Or are you going to trust in, for me, am I gonna trust God and have my faith to lay out? And my personal belief, again, is that I commune with God just like we sit here and
Right.
talk.
Right.
You know, I believe that God speaks and He gives divine insight and instruction through many ways, through His Word, through, you know, I had, when I knew my time was up in my job, there was someone, and it happens sometimes in ways that we would never imagine.
Right.
But I had someone say to me, the least religious person that I know, say to me, your time is up here.
Oh, wow.
And that thing hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, first of all, what do you know about my time? Like, what do you know?
I know, right?
But
Who you
I
know?
believe that when the Bible says, seek wisdom and He will give it to you, you know, bountifully if you seek that. But it takes, it's your choice to go out and seek knowledge. It's your choice to know more than what you've been taught and what you plan.
Right.
And I think it boils down to a matter of choice.
Right. Definitely. And guys, make sure that you like, comment, and share. And speaking of comments, we have our first. Not questioning limits and confines. Not questioning limits and confines born from spiritual growth. My parents and I have heated combos with my newfound understanding and their old school one. But I'll take the fire to help challenge us all to fearlessly grow more in spirit and expand, allow our minds to go further in the routine thought. We fear to rely on God for guidance, but put the Bible over God. Why it's not enforcing church to independently think outside church and talk to Him directly. We are vessels God can speak to and through. And talk about vessels, right? I think that we need to be careful of what vessels we listen to. You know what I mean? Because God gives us discernment, and He gave us that for a reason. You know what I mean? So He actually welcomes us questioning. You know what I mean? So asking a question is not questioning God. It's not questioning your faith. But there are certain things that you want to know. You know what I mean? So it's not a bad thing to ask questions, but that old school mentality that you're kind of talking about, our parents, they wouldn't allow it. And it goes back to slavery. Like, they weren't allowed to question anything, because the slave masters told them, or read the scripture verbatim, love your earthly masters as you would God. So they use that scripture to justify slavery and how them serving the slaves and honoring the master or obeying their master was somehow was
That would keep them from going to hell.
Exactly, keep them from going to hell, basically. So, and same thing here. Like, we follow false prophets all the time. You know what I mean? I know there are a lot of great pastors out there. Mine is one of them. But what happens is you have a lot of false prophets who they prey on you not knowing. They prey on you not asking questions simply because they can tell you anything. They know you're not going to question it because they have that title. But for me personally, they know not to try that with me because I'm gonna ask you.
Right.
I'm a why type of guy, and I get side eyes from my family, like, what you asking that for, and all kinds of stuff like that. But honestly, at this point, I don't care because when it's Judgment Day, I'm gonna be the one that has got to answer that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't want to. I'd rather know than not know.
That's a great topic. You're talking about Judgment Day. That's something that I like to ask questions about too, because a lot of times we'll talk about heaven and hell, right?
Right.
But then it's like some people will say, well, there's no one in hell yet. Like the people that have died in the past, they're like in a layover right now, in a waiting on Judgment Day, waiting on Jesus to return.
Right.
So then my question is, okay, if Jesus born and walked 2019 plus lived 30 years, like 2,049 years ago, what about all the people that died before him?
Right.
Where are they?
Right.
Were they waiting on Jesus then also? Because he had never walked, he wasn't here. So, and what about the people that, like, things that took place during that time?
Right.
So, those are some of the things that I tend to question. And again, if they don't know, just say, I don't know.
Right.
Instead of coming up with their own answers and they'll say it's this way, it's that way. And something that I really, really struggle with is this. When we talk about the way to heaven is through Jesus Christ, and that's the only way, that you must believe that Jesus died on the cross for we be forgiven our sins on the third day he risen, da 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 da.
Right.
So we have to understand that Christianity is not the only religion in the world.
Absolutely.
A lot of people were never, ever, ever introduced to Christianity.
Right.
People were all over the world that never saw Jesus or never heard of Jesus. So you are telling me that because God knows all things, that he knew you have billions of people born and die over time that will never accept Jesus and they just going to hell?
Right. And without even, like, how can I be punished for something, for ignorance? If I
Right,
don't know.
right.
Like, how are you gonna, and we talk, and we, all these religions, right?
Right.
My whole thing is, like, we were raised a certain way.
Mhm.
So technically, I'm only a Christian because that's what I was
What
told
you were
I
taught,
had to
right,
be.
right,
If
right.
I was born into a family of Muslims, I'd be
Right.
worshiping Allah right now.
Mhm.
So is it truly our choice, or are we just living by what we were actually told?
And if God knows that, well, he said, okay, well, you get away with it because, you were taught.
Right. You didn't know.
You didn't know. And then you have to think about, I mean, there are extenuating circumstances, but what about the babies, the 2-year-olds that die in car accidents, accidental gun deaths,
Right.
that never had an opportunity to give their life to Christ?
Right. So by default, are they punished?
Are they punished? Do they go to eternal fire?
I'm gonna answer. I don't know because I don't want to say, you know what I'm saying, say the
Right.
wrong thing.
In this case, see, that's the thing. I don't think there is a wrong.
Right.
And like you said, if you don't know something, hey,
Just say it.
just say it.
But I guarantee you will not find a pastor anywhere that's gonna say, I don't know.
Right.
I've never seen one.
Now, my
who
pastor,
didn't know.
and I say my wife and I, we visit True North Church. It's a undenominational, predominantly white church. I wanted something different because my sister, brother-in-law, and I, we all kind of like attend churches together. They have 4 kids. I have 4, and my youngest 2 are 6 and 4. My 6-year-old has autism. So, I'm really concerned about where he is and what the experience is like for him.
Right.
So a lot of times it depends on what his day is like, will dictate where we went. Well, True North Church, I mean, one of the guys that work at a district office with me, his wife runs like the school here for the church. So they have like sections for 0 to 6 months, 1 to 2-year-olds, 3 to 4, all the way up. They have activities for kids. They actually have a separate area.
Mike, don't go to somebody else and say, well, yeah, they were talking about this and talking about that. They don't know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? And that's when it goes back to, for whatever reason, black people, they kill me with that. Like, you can't ask questions, and anything you question about the church, you're questioning God, you're questioning religion.
I think me and my mom were just having this conversation. As much as we want to separate ourselves from slavery as a people, as much as we want to say that we're oppressed by other cultures, we oppress ourselves in our thinking.
Yes.
So, again, I go back to, you were talking about the church. What drew me to where I am now is it was somewhere that met my son where he is, and that's important to me. Um, he's a homeschool child. He's very bright, but you know, he doesn't have many friends, things like that. So he's one of those kids, yeah. He spends a lot of time on his video games and things like that. He gets out socially based on his, you know, lesson and what he's doing during the day. And we went to this church, and when you walk into the children's for his age, guess what they got? Video games. You know, they met
how
him
you
where
attract
he
them? How do
was.
you know?
And a lot of, like you said, if you go back in our culture, in our community, if we were to say, well, what about this? It's like, nah, we ain't got to do all of that. And we're not open to anything but how we, right.
You gotta be traditional. Like, why we gotta wear a shirt and tie to church all the time? Why we gotta wear slacks? Like, sometimes I'm a jean and t-shirt type of guy.
Right.
So, and one of the churches I go to here, it's a Methodist church, and they dress down every Sunday. Like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and so with me, and I won't lie, I'm not go to church every Sunday type of person, but that's more enticing for me to want to go because I ain't got to worry about finding nothing to wear. I ain't got to worry about looking a certain way. I go in there, I get the word, they're done in an hour and a half, and we out. And we're out. And, you know, while we're talking about a lot of things, and again, guys, make sure you continue liking, sharing, and commenting. One thing we were talking about earlier was tithing, right? And with tithing, right, I think tithing is necessary because how is the church going to function without money?
Right.
Now, hopefully, those funds are being allocated and used in the way that they should be. But I think a lot of us Christians, we tithe because we're told we have to, and we also kind of expect something in return. So I'm going to tithe, but you know I know I'm gonna get this back, so I'm going to tithe. And as soon as we get that blessing, oh well, I tithe extra this month, so I know that's as a result. And it could be because you tithe, but we don't know that for certain. It could have just been something that was destined for you.
So, my opinion, I told you this earlier, we should not tithe out of necessity, and we should not tithe out of the thought that I'm going to get something from this. It's an expression. It's an expression of faith.
Right.
And it's an expression of, for me, gratitude for what I feel is the provision that's been, or let me say this, what I've been blessed in an area of skill to be able to provide provision for my household.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. And I recently made a comment. You cannot pay God for your blessings.
No, because you don't have enough.
And yeah, and that's kind of what it is. Because I mean, we're all blessed. And I'll be honest, like, and I'm like when I pray, right? I tend to pray more when I need something.
Right.
And I realize that in myself. Like I'll pray at night, I'll say to God, I'll say the prayer, and I get better, right? But when I need that little extra something, I say the prayer, and I'm like, God, I come to you as humble. Right. Not because I need something, and I got thinking, I'm like, well, it's everybody that, but the thing is, the thing that should be thankful for, like, you know, I have all my limbs, I'm in good health, I made it to see 43 years old. A lot of people don't make that. That's a blessing in and of itself.
Right.
A lot of us, when we look at blessings, we think materialistic stuff.
Right.
You get a new job, oh, look at God. Get a new house, oh, look at God blessing me. You know what I mean?
So is he still not God when all of those things are going on?
Exactly. Or when you get evicted, I mean, you don't say look at God then. I mean, maybe God needed that to happen.
Right.
But you don't see that as a blessing. But sometimes we get our blessings after the storm. So we go through something and we come out strong, but we don't say thank God until we come out of that storm. But while we're in there, we ain't saying, oh, thank you God for letting me dwell in the storm. We ain't saying that. We're like, God, what I'm gonna do to get out. You know what I mean?
I was just having that conversation. So you've been following my lives for the last few months, and I talked very candidly about my professional life and the struggles that I've been having probably over the last 6 months.
Right.
And as soon as I got this new opportunity, I told my mom, I was like, I have been really slack about just my time, personal time with God. But as long as I was going through that situation, as long as I needed something, I was there like 4:45. I'm hitting the floor, like I'm spending time, and we all do it. But a lot of us aren't honest enough to say, you know what, I'm only seeking God because I need something.
Absolutely.
You know, I think about the same thing all the time. And even how we are with people also. when we talk about, I hear people say all the time that, if friends act like they want to see them struggling and things like that. And I gave that a lot of thought. And I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I don't want to see anyone struggling. But in all honesty, I admire and miss the friendship that we had when we were broke and when we had nothing and during the struggle. So I can recall times where, my friends and I, we had nothing other than each other. You know, sharing clothes, sneakers, and like we had a committed friendship. But as soon as we started getting things and didn't really need one another, friendship parted.
Right.
So then I thought about it, I was like, you know what? And that's the same way a lot of us treat God, because I've been the same. I remember when I started teaching, just share something. I was working, and one day I got called up to the office, and they were like, you need to go down to the district office. I was like, well, we're going to cover my class. Like, we have coverage for you. So right then I was like, well, they knew something before calling me up, like what's going on. So anyway, I get down there, and the guy in HR was like, oh, Ms. Mitchell, we didn't pay attention to your background, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, well, I checked the yes box, They're like, yeah, we didn't realize this, so you can't teach. And this is the middle of the school year. And I was like, what? So they were like, yeah, in Georgia we have a professional standards commission, and we have to apply and see what's going on, yada, yada. So I called, and the guy was like, oh man, you've been in trouble with this number of times. He was like, typically, everyone went through college, they may have had a little arrested, DUI, et cetera, et cetera. So he discussed my background. I was like, man, look, that was X number of years ago. I'm not blaming anyone, although some things, weren't my fault, I had no control over. And I just like, man, what do I do? And I started praying. I took the letter that I got from the Professional Standards Commission. They told me I had the opportunity to appeal. I took the appeal letter, made a copy, sent it back, folded it, put it in my Bible. I started praying. I told maybe two of my friends this, man. So when I first moved away from Charleston, I had some money. And I told my wife after the fact, I didn't want anyone to know what I was doing. And I was like, man, like, God, what do I need to do? And God said to me, give the money away. And I didn't tell anybody what was going on. He just said, give the money away. I was like, what? Like, this is like, how much? Your son?
I'm sorry, what?
And the more I prayed, God said to me, give the money away. And had the money hidden. And again, I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, but anyone that expressed a need, and I mean, I have friends, I never ever talked about it at all. If I just saw someone saying something about a financial need, asked how could I help, and I just gave it to them. I mean, unbelievable amounts. I was just giving it away. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's crazy at first. Like, I couldn't believe I was doing it. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just try to listen. And when I gave away, man, I told one of my coworkers about this. I was just giving, because they were like, why do you do so many things for people? And they were like different things. I had kids that couldn't afford prom dresses and tuxedos. I paid for it. Senior dues, I paid for it. This went on for months. Friends that talked about financial struggles, I just did whatever. And when I gave away the very last $100 bill that I gave away, I got a phone call from the Georgia Professional Standards Commission, from the PSC. And the guy said to me, so Mr. Mitchell, I don't know what came across our committee, but they decided to give you your teaching license. And man, like, that was unbelievable. Like, when I shared with my coworker, she broke down in tears because she was wondering, like, what happened. I was like, man.
Boxed in, I can't remember.
And I'm serious, man. I was like, I told my dad, I think I told my best friend during the time, but I didn't share with anyone what I was doing. And I mean, the very last $100 bill, I got a call the very next day, and the guy said he didn't know what came over them. And I'm saying to myself, I knew what came over them.
Right.
And that is how I got my educator's license, man. And they said, well, what we're going to do, Mr. Mitchell, is on your license, you're going to have your license, but we're going to, something he said they'll have in case something ever comes up, we're covering ourselves. We're going to allow you to teach. And I was like, man, you can put whatever you want.
Yeah, I know, right?
Trouble is behind me, like,
Right.
you know, and that alone strengthened my faith,
Right.
and nothing can get in between that.
Right.
But then I always questioned what was going on when it came to telling a person how they should live.
Right.
Why do you do this? You do that.
Right.
And recently, I spoke last Thursday when I had the cancer.
Yeah.
So I went home and I spoke to the graduates from my high school, celebrate 25 years in a high school, and speaking with the kids, man. It was I'm at a baccalaureate program, and it's funny the reaction, the responses I got on social media when they saw me in the pulpit at the church, and it's so funny again to these things that we have embedded. Like all the churches aren't structured the same. All sermons that have to be given the same way.
Right.
But I remember speaking at another church.
Right.
I would do a back to school. I don't even call it a lecture, but like a word of encouragement for kids. And at one church where I spoke, they were like, "If you don't mind, you're gonna have to speak like out front because only ministers are allowed to be in this area." I'm like, "That's cool, no
Right.
problem. As long as they can hear me, I'm fine."
Right.
But Thursday, I met with the pastor. We were talking for a while, and he called me up. And I was like, he said, "Since you're the keynote speaker, I want you in the pastor's chair." So not only was I there, like I was in his chair, at the pulpit, and just seeing the reaction and responses from people is like, "What are you doing up there? What is it?" But what are they basing that off of? So you're already shooting the messenger. So that's why I like having that what they call a Muslim name,
Right.
because it automatically messes with their psyche and their
Yeah,
subconscious.
the first thing she asked me
I was
was,
like,
"Is
what?
he a Muslim?"
Yeah,
I'm like,
I did.
Right.
Nah, I don't
No,
think so.
no, not at all.
I don't think so.
But it's intentional, and it started off as a part of some research that I was doing. I'm a graduate research assistant now,
Okay.
so I do a ton of research, and I don't want to get too far, but that's basically when I'm done with the program, how professors keep their job.
Right.
They have to continue publishing things and researching things. So I have a
Right.
ton of things
Yeah.
that I'm starting on.
Right.
When I get to that point, I can start publishing and writing.
And it's funny, like, because we're talking about tithing, and like I personally believe that you can tithe in more ways than just monetary.
Right.
Like what you did, right?
Mhm.
You gave away all this money. Now, you never brought that back up to those people, right?
Never.
Like, remember that
Never.
time, like, I mean,
Never,
for a
never.
lot of people, they do that to hold something over your head. Like my
Right,
thing is,
right.
if you're not doing it of your own free will,
Right.
then it's pointless. You know what I mean? Like if somebody will remember that time I did X, Y, and Z, like I've done things for people that I'll never bring up. People have done things for me that they'll never bring up. And my whole
Right.
thing is, it's like it's about because I think one of the ways that the Bible says you can tithe is by helping the poor. You know what I mean?
Right,
So if you're helping people that are less fortunate, I think that's another way as well. But we're again so used to the old.
Now I'm a firm
regime,
believer
the old way
in
of doing
helping
things.
in other ways, and I
Right.
truly believe that. Like, I feel like you can do other things, and God would really accept. Because if you have a person that goes to church, you put a few dollars in the basket, but as soon as you leave church, you're talking about this person, you're mistreating others, you're doing that, versus a person that just did not have extra
They
financially.
wanted to, but they didn't have the means.
They didn't have the means to do it, but they offered a kind gesture. They were willing to watch their kids for you. They helped this elderly lady take her groceries to the car in the rain. Things like that is what I think that God would
He
prefer.
deals with the heart of the man.
Right,
You know what I'm
right,
saying?
right.
And it's not always about materialistic. Even I wanted to ask you this when you said you prayed and God, what you know is God saying, "Give it all away." You had a choice,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Do you believe you had a choice?
I believe I had a choice, and I was like, because at that time it felt like nothing that I was doing myself was working, and I feel like I'm a fairly relatively intelligent person, and I view myself as a problem solver. So initially I go to myself before anyone or anything else, but it got to the point where I was like, you know what, everything that I'm trying is not working. I have to try something else, and moving around my now family, my in-laws, man, like their faith and belief is so like unbelievable, you know. So that helped a lot. But like I said, I've always had a relationship. always, because a lot of the things that I went through in life, I'm like, there were times when I questioned God. For 8 years, my father battled addiction,
Right.
substance abuse. So a lot of times I was like, God, if you're out there, this God can't work the way people say it works.
Right.
Because why me?
Why is this happening?
Why is it happening to me and to us? Things like that.
Right.
But again, I started to appreciate the little things. So when you talk about, in college, I always thought that, you know what, it could be worse.
Yeah.
And I thank God for allowing me to see worse.
Right.
Because I've seen, so I started to appreciate everything that I've had, no matter how bad the situation is.
Yeah, because our situations can always be are so much better than other people.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to piggyback on something you mentioned earlier, you talked about people, they go to church and, say and do all the right things. When they leave,
Right.
they're talking about people, right?
Right,
So,
right.
like, because I know, like, in my church, we walk up and, like, we have one, like, the tithes or whatever, we walk up and put the envelope. So everybody who's sitting up front of the pulpit can see who's paying who
Right,
ain't.
right.
And, people are saying, well, X, Y, and Z ain't paid, or, you know what I mean? And that's, to me, that's pointless conversation. Don't worry about what somebody did or didn't do, worry about you.
Right.
And not just that, but how can you sit in the front pew of the church and, praise God and all this other stuff, and then you got people who you supposedly love and care about that you don't even talk to, or
Right.
you don't speak, you don't talk to them. So it's kind of like, how can you say you truly love God when you don't love the man sitting next to you and you see them daily? You've never seen God, you don't know what God looks like. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you don't. To me, that's a contradiction. You don't love God. You can't love God because you don't love me.
You love the thought of what God
Right.
can do for you.
Exactly. That's all it is. And you love it because it's been said that this is what you have to love
have to
God.
do,
So
right.
are you doing it because you truly do, or are you doing it simply because you were told to?
So one thing that it bothered me a lot, and I always speak about is, like, I guess my expectations of the church are different. And when we moved to Massachusetts, it was a white church, it's United Methodist Church, I think it was church.
Right.
My mom went there. She was a single mother, mid-80s. She had a decent job. She had a government job, but the cost of living in Massachusetts was so expensive that even working for the government, you qualified for public assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And like they welcomed me with open arms.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that was memorable to me. And it's funny now in hindsight, like I didn't know what Phi Delta, the white sororities were.
Mm-hmm.
I was rocking them T-shirts in elementary school because at the church, when they found out, my mom had kids, whatnot, they were like, "What size you wear?" I had one Sunday after church, I had 5 trash bags filled with clothes, and I enjoyed I had toys, science kits. This guy, retired military guy, donated a weight bench to me. Like I had everything except a mongoose bicycle. That's something I want. But seeing that from the church, that is what I thought the church should be like. But then when I came back home, and then drugs hit the area, and I saw people. Man, my best friend grew up with no electricity in his house our entire life. Right. No electricity and no running water. So when I went to his house, we would pump gallons of water with the hand pump and take it in the house so his family would have water, and then we'd go out and play together. That was,
Right.
But I'm like, how can these same people in the same church with all these Cadillacs and Mercedes Benzes and vacations and all these
How can you
extra
see
things,
that and not?
how can you see that and not one time say, you know what? I know these kids are in this house. Can we at least show up with a care package?
Right.
So.
A lot of black folks.
Unfortunate.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, a lot of black folks. I got mine, so
You
got
need to get
to go
yours.
get yours.
You gotta get
Right.
yours.
Or they point the blame on them because they aren't saved enough, or they aren't acting in church enough.
They ain't doing something right.
Something
and I'm
right.
doing everything.
And I'm doing right.
God ain't gonna bless you if you're not doing it
Right.
this way.
This way, right.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because a lot of, and this isn't me, putting down another religion, but when we see, and what I've seen as I've gotten older is an increase in my peers turning to Islam and other religions.
Right.
Because a lot of the way that we as Christians walk does not line up with what it is that the Bible or or who Jesus is portrayed to be. And a lot of it goes back to, like you said earlier, you had relationship.
Yes.
You knew when he was talking to you. And the Bible talks about the still small voice that you hear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, give all the money away.
All the money.
It doesn't always make sense.
Even
But
that last $100 bill.
it's that still small voice that we hear that it says, walk this way. It may be contrary to whatever, but when you're in personal relationship with God, God will correct you in how you're walking, how you're dealing with people. He'll say, go back, undo what you just did.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that as our people, the way that we've been raised in tradition and religion, we've conditioned ourselves, or we've been conditioned to do things one way and one way only.
Right. And I think when we do that, we truly limit ourselves. And you know, and I know that a lot of people they may be upset about the conversation. A lot of them, I'm sure they have. That's why I was hoping for more comments. A lot of people didn't really say a lot of things. But,
You got pretty good comments.
but the thing of it is, you know, like I didn't expect to come here and solve, you know, the conundrum. Like I didn't expect, you know, I think this is the right start to have the conversation. You know what I'm saying? So because all in the past we really don't really talk about it. But my whole thing is, I think people can talk, but you got to walk it too.
That's right.
Like you can talk and say, I love God, I love the Bible, I love, you know, you know, how can you love God if you don't love your fellow man? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not the most overly religious person in the world, but I know my God. We have a relationship. It's my own personal one. And I don't, now, thankfully, as I matured, I learned that I can't live the way people want me to. I have to live the way that I want to, and the way that God is guiding me to live.
Right.
And He humbles me. Oftentimes, you know, we get humbled and He takes things away. And I've learned to, at one time when I would go be mad and you know, curse and stuff like that, now I'm more calm and I accept it, I pray about it, and then I move on. But again, I think everybody has own individual relationship. So because you go sit in the front row at church every Sunday, it doesn't make you more Christian than the rest of us.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So, got a few minutes left, guys. This has been I mean, it's been a good conversation. Like, you know, the Bible says where two or more gather. You know what I'm saying? So technically, this is church right now, and obviously we got a whole school of people out here as well, right? Exactly. Got a whole personal congregation, right? So in closing, like, what do you guys think about in terms of where do we go from here in terms of Black people and religion, and you know, being open to this type of dialogue?
I think that we should try our best to create a space where this is invited, because it is warranted. It's something that happened. I think that we're much smarter than our ancestors. We're exposed to more things.
Right.
We have more education, and it's not that we're losing faith. It's just that we have a hunger for more knowledge and more information. And I think that pastors need to understand that and be willing to actively engage in certain things. So they, you know, not saying that pastors should join lives at all times, which some pastors do, but I think that they should consider creating a space that is a little more inviting. And I know, you know, you have Bible study, but Bible studies are led.
Right.
Yeah, it's already packaged. It's
Predetermined.
predetermined. That's what I want you to get.
Right.
Versus an open dialogue where we can say, what questions do you have?
Right.
What's going on? How does this align to X, Y, Z? And understand that we're all dynamic. And what we get from something is based on personal experiences and a lot to do with ourselves individually.
Right.
So although you gave a sermon from a verse of scripture, we're all going to receive it differently.
Right. And we asked the wrong question now. They were like, I'm gonna tell your grandma. Kimmy has a comment. Kimmy says, my pastor often speaks about making a dent with your dash. On our tombstone, it will read the day that you were born and the date you died with a dash in the middle. We don't choose the day that we are born, and we don't really choose the day that you die. But you can choose what to do with the time in the middle. What are you doing for others to make this world a better place? How can you make an impact on someone? We are to be the hands and the feet of God. All I can say about that, Kimmy, is word. And that's powerful. You're right. It's all about what we do while we're on earth. Like, what mark am I making? Like, I know yesterday when I did my end of birthday day post or whatever. And this summer I'm doing a lot of things with my nephew in his football camps and
Right.
SATs and everything else, right? And my thing is like I'm 43 at this point. You know, I'm still young, but it's time for me to start investing in people. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm not looking for anything. I'm not expecting. Like he told me his goals. He told me his dreams. I'm gonna do what I can to help him achieve that.
Right.
A lot of the mistakes I've made, I can tell him, don't do this. Don't try not to. And we talk often. He makes mistakes and all that. I don't yell at him. I don't scold him. I said, okay, this is what you did. What are you gonna do to correct it? You know what I'm saying?
And
So
God,
we got to.
he deals with us the same way.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I believe. In my personal relationship, these are your mistakes, but I'm not holding that against you. But how do we walk out the rest of life, making sure that we don't, and how do we impact others from the
Absolutely.
situations and
Yeah.
the circumstances that
Yeah.
we've experienced? We talked earlier about, how bad things happen to good people,
Right.
and we get our blessings on the other end. But sometimes we are um, we go through things so that we can help someone else
Yeah.
overcome.
Yeah, because once you're going through it, you know what to and what not to do. So, like my thing is, you learn from like I want to learn from your mistakes. You know what I'm saying? So, if you've been there, like I think that you know, with our parents and everything, they didn't get to experience a lot of the things that we experienced. So they really couldn't talk to us about how to handle certain situations. But with us now, with our kids, I mean, we would listen to the same music, we wear the same clothes, we can relate a lot more.
Right.
So now we can tell them, okay, this is what you need to avoid, this is what you need to do. So this was a great conversation, guys. I really wish we had more time. But I'm
Quick question: do you have kids?
I do. I have an 11-year-old son.
And how are you with religion with him? Did you allow him to have his way and learn, or did you
Good question.
spoon feed him?
We just talked about this earlier. He had a question the other day, and if my mom's watching, I'm not sure if she's watching. But he questioned, like, if God knew that Adam and Eve were going to eat from this tree.
Right.
So it's allowing him to ask those questions and have that dialogue and sit down based on, actually offer him the opportunity to research himself,
Right.
educate himself, and then we come back and talk about it.
So what was your response to that?
My mom asked the question. He asked my mom.
And that was one of my first questions.
And my mom, I told you, I was like, see, this is the point of this live tomorrow night, because it wasn't that she didn't tell him don't question it. I think for me, her posture was more like, oh, what is he watching? What is influencing him to ask these questions? But that's what he's supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And the way that, like I shared with you all earlier, even growing up in the Holiness Church and both of my parents being elders, once my mom left that church, she began to have more open dialogue with us.
Right.
So it's more reminding of her, like, hey, remember, at some point we shifted to this too.
Absolutely.
And she was able to have, my understanding, a wonderful conversation with him yesterday. They were actually it opened up more dialogue. Oh, yes, yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Opened up more dialogue about it, and I'm actually going to take him out to get he's going to graduate to a real Bible now. So,
Okay, right.
take him out, but so that he can, I want to encourage him to educate himself.
Absolutely, you got to.
I'm a big history, well, not big history, but you need to know what's going on at the time. When you're reading the Bible, know what time and era that particular book of scripture was written, what was going on, so that you know how to apply it.
Right, and that's what I had to learn too. And I think Turquoise's comment is a great way to end. She says, "I'll be honest, I don't go to church unless I'm forced. I think people should believe what they believe. I won't say I don't believe in God, but I do question whose God is the real God. I believe in something, but I just live my life as doing good and being good. I give when I can for no reason, and I just believe in being a good person." And that's kind of that's kind of where I kind of am too. I believe in God. Like I said, obviously I believe in the God that I was raised to believe in, because I mean, I guess old habits die hard, right? But with Islam, Buddhism, all these other religions, right? I know regardless of who you worship, there is a God, there is a supreme power, and I think that we need to, as a whole, start living instead of talking. We talk about this stuff all the time. We need to start living that way. So if you got people who you love, who you aren't talking to, you need to cut that shit out. You know what I'm saying? You need to live the way that God tells you to live. If you got that person you ain't talked to in years, that friend that you lost contact with, that friend who you're holding a grudge against because y'all dated the same girl way back when, you know what I'm saying? There are a lot of things that we need to do as a people. And I think this was a great dialogue, a great way to start. Hopefully you guys are open to revisiting this one day
Yes,
before
yes,
Chris goes
definitely.
to Charlotte. I believe we're gonna leave that alone. But again, guys, I want to thank y'all for joining. Thank you for the comments. Make sure you continue commenting, sharing, and liking. Because for the people who did not get a chance to join the live, I'm gonna post this on my page. It will be on there. You can look me up on YouTube. Go to search Hook Williams by my YouTube page, and again, it's available on all podcast platforms. Search Get Hook, and I hope to be hearing from you soon. We'll see you again next week.
So how are you
Let's see how
approaching
long
with
this
your,
thing here.
with your
What's
kid?
going on, man? We done. We done.
No,
Oh, you got it.
no, this thing can take forever in a day.
Please keep this going. I enjoyed you all. A great conversation. Two about twins. We definitely will. Definitely will. I want to share with you. I have a platform also on Blog Talk Radio, and you feel free to use it anytime, man. It makes it easier for guests to chime in. So when I was doing a weekly blog, I started doing an education blog. So my goal is to create a national PTA. So I want to talk about education. There's so many things involving education, especially like I said, when we have child with disabilities.
Right.
I've been able to share information. Um, I've been able to share information with people that they did not know that has been very helpful to them. But there's a platform where we can create this same show. You can block off an hour's time, and it'll give you a telephone number as a host.
You said this Blog Talk Radio?
Yes, Blog Talk Radio. I can give you my credentials. And that way, callers can actually call in. Yeah, they can call in on the telephone and give their feedback. Oh, so you're on live for this. You got to control or delete it. Hey. She's getting so tall. I ain't up here. You probably go to your page and it's still until he gets it off. That's fine. We're experiencing some technical difficulties right now. Yeah, we're actually trying to end the live, but it's cool. this is a good problem to have.
It is.
I knew, right?
You'd rather be able to not end it than not start it.
It's weird because it's gonna allow you to start something over.
Right.
I don't want to do that. Can you access it from your,
That's what I was trying to do. I mean, I'm on my page, but let me try this. If I start another one.
So in that,
you try to start a new one?
it cut it off.
You did?
But I have a delay.
It's still there.
Yeah, I have a delay, so.
Yep.
Yeah, we still up there.
Still
It's still
live.
up here.
You're gonna have to control alt delete that one.